What if the whispers in the dark weren't just your imagination? I never believed in the shadows until they started calling my name. That night, the air grew colder, and I swore something unseen moved behind me. My heart pounded, but instead of fear, I felt God pushing me forward. The darkness wasn't just after me. It wanted my soul. If you think light can overcome any darkness, watch how my story unfolds.
I had never been afraid of the river. All my life, it had been part of me. As a child, I bathed in it, fetched water for Mama with my tiny calabash, and sometimes watched the fishermen push their narrow canoes against its slow current. It was muddy and brown, but it felt like home, alive and familiar, like a giant sleeping animal that allowed us to live beside it. Until the night it whispered my name. It began like a breeze at first, a faint rustling through the elephant grass. The air was thick with harmattan dust, and my small oil lamp trembled in my hand. I was walking the narrow dirt path alone, returning from my aunt's hut with leftover yam wrapped in a leaf. Then I heard it. Ada. I froze. The night pressed in on me. Far away, a dog barked once, then went silent. Even the crickets stopped singing. I tried to laugh it off in my mind, maybe it was the wind, or a frog's croak, or a trick of the night. I forced my feet to move. Step. 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 Then I heard it again, softer, wetter, like someone speaking with water in their mouth. Ada. The voice rose from the riverbank. My stomach dropped. My hands shook so hard the lamp's tiny flame flickered and died, leaving me in the cold darkness. I couldn't move. The voice had weight, like it carried memory. Like someone who knew me, someone who wanted me, was calling me to step closer. My chest tightened. My throat felt dry. Without thinking, I whispered, "Jesus, help me." Then, I ran. Bare feet slapping the dirt, heart hammering, yam forgotten in the dust. Branches scratched my arms as I tore through the narrow path back to the village. I didn't stop until I burst through our small wooden door and collapsed on the mat, gasping for air. Mama stirred from her sleep. "Adaora. Wetin happen?" Her voice was thick with sleep and fear. I tried to speak, but my lips trembled. My breath came in ragged bursts. The river," I whispered. It called my name. Mama's face hardened. She sat up slowly, crossed herself, and muttered a prayer. Then she gripped my shoulders, her warm hand steady against my shaking body. "You must never go there at night again," she said firmly. "Your papa's spirit is still there." Her words struck me like a stone. My father. I swallowed hard, remembering the night he drowned 2 years ago. He had gone to check his fishing traps after the evening rain. We found his canoe overturned, half sunk in the brown water. His wrist chain with the little silver cross had been caught in the weeds downstream, but his body, the river never gave it back. That night, sleep was my enemy. I lay on the mat, eyes open to the thatched roof, listening to the wind in the trees. Every creak of bamboo, every whisper of grass outside the hut, sounded like the river calling me again. And when I finally slipped into uneasy dreams, it followed me there. I was standing at the riverbank, moonlight turning the water to dull silver. Mist swirled around my feet. Slowly, ripples began to move toward me, though the air was still. Then I saw it, a shadow beneath the water. A face, blurred but familiar, drifting up toward me. It was my father. His eyes were open, mouth moving as if he was speaking to me, but I couldn't hear the words. Behind him, more faces began to appear, men, women, even a child, eyes wide, hair floating like weeds. Suddenly, a cold hand grabbed my ankle from below. I screamed and jerked awake, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break through my chest. Mama sat up immediately, whispering a prayer and holding my hands until I stopped shaking. By dawn, I knew one thing. The river wasn't done with me. The rooster had not yet crowed when I rose from the mat the next morning. My hands were cold and clammy, though the air was still and dry. I pushed open our small wooden door, and the village was cloaked in grey harmattan haze. Smoke curled from a distant hut where someone was already stoking their fire. But I could still hear it in my head. The whisper. Ada. I shook my head hard, as if to fling the memory away. I told myself it was a dream, a trick, something my tired mind invented. But my body betrayed me, my knees felt weak, my chest still heavy with fear. Mama rose shortly after, tying her wrapper tight around her chest. Her eyes studied me for a moment before she said softly, "You know, sleep well." I shook my head. She sighed. Your papa, maybe he did find rest." I wanted to ask her how a dead man's voice could ride the river like mist. But the words stayed in my throat. By afternoon, life in the village returned to its rhythm. Children ran barefoot across the dusty square, laughing. The blacksmith's hammer clanged in the distance. Two women walked past our hut balancing calabashes of water on their heads, chatting and laughing softly. The sight of the water calabash sent a chill down my spine. I had not fetched water since that night. Mama did it at sunrise while I sat in the hut pretending to braid raffia. But by afternoon, she insisted I help. "Adaora, fear no go solve anything," she said, pressing the empty calabash into my hands. "God dey with you. The sun dey shine. Go." I hesitated at the doorway, gripping the smooth gourd like a shield. My heart pounded as I walked the familiar dirt path toward the river. Every rustle of grass sounded like a whisper. Every bird call felt like a warning. When I reached the bank, the river looked harmless. Its brown water slid lazily past, carrying a few leaves. The sun shimmered on its surface, turning tiny ripples to gold. I crouched, dipping the calabash carefully. My fingers brushed the cool water, and I shivered. Then I saw it. Not a face this time, just a faint ripple moving against the current. It curved toward me like a finger beckoning. I froze. The air felt heavier, as if the river itself was holding its breath. Then, ever so softly, I heard it again. "Ada." The calabash slipped from my hands, splashing into the water. I staggered back, my foot slipping in the mud. My hand shot out and caught a root before I fell in. The whisper rose again, closer this time, calling into my ear though no one was there. "Ada, come home." I scrambled to my feet and ran all the way to the village, leaving the calabash floating downstream. That night, I refused to close my eyes. The hut was quiet except for Momo's soft breathing. The moonlight crept through the small hole in the wall, laying a silver line across the floor. But then I heard it. Not from outside this time. From inside my dream or my mind. "Ada." I jerked upright. My skin prickled. The whisper had been inside my ear, warm and wet, like someone had leaned close to speak. Tears filled my eyes. I clutched the small Bible Mama kept by the mat and whispered the only verse I could remember. "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you." The words shook in my mouth, but I repeated them until my voice grew steadier. I thought of Papa, his laughter, the way he hummed old hymns while mending fishing nets. And I wondered if he was lonely beneath the river, waiting for someone to answer his call. The following day, I decided to tell Chinedu, my mother's cousin and the only man brave enough to fish near our bank since Papa's death. He listened, leaning on his long paddle. "The river has memory," he said finally. "Your Papa drowned there. Sometimes, water go hold on to things. Voice. Shadow. Spirit." I shivered. "But why is it calling me?" He shrugged. "River they call who it want. But you get Bible. Hold 'em tight. Make your heart no fear. Not only fear make water get power." His words didn't comfort me. That night, I dreamed again. The dream began softly. I was standing by the river under a pale blue sky. Butterflies floated lazily over the grass. Then the water turned black, like ink spilling across the surface. A single hand broke through the dark water, dripping mud. It reached toward me. Then another hand, and another, until dozens of hands stretched from the water like a forest of the dead. They waved slowly, as if trying to pull me in. Then, from the center of the river, a head rose. It was Papa. But his eyes, they were empty. I opened my mouth to scream, but water rushed into my throat. My chest burned as I sank, surrounded by pale faces and cold hands. I jolted awake with a cry, drenched in sweat, tears blurring my eyes. Mama shook me, praying in a whisper. I knew one thing. The river was no longer outside my life. It had followed me home. By the third night, I realized I could no longer escape the river. Even in daylight, it lingered in my mind. When I tried to sweep the compound, my ears strained for whispers. When Mama sent me to the market, I avoided looking toward the path that led to the water. And yet, I felt it calling me, quiet but constant, like the pulse of my own blood. The village had always treated the river with caution, but now, I felt like it had singled me out. It was the night of the full moon when it happened. The air was heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. My oil lamp flickered against the mud walls of our hut, throwing long shadows that swayed like restless spirits. Mama had fallen asleep, her soft snores mixing with the far-off cry of a night bird. I sat awake, clutching the small Bible to my chest. I told myself I wouldn't answer the call. I would pray and wait until dawn. Then I heard it. Ada. A single whisper, low and wet, calling through the cracks in the door. I froze. My lips trembled. I wanted to pray, but my voice stuck in my throat. Then it came again. Ada, come to me. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Jesus is with me. Jesus is with me. The whisper grew louder, as if right outside the hut. Adaora. And then, 3 soft knocks on the door. My heart leapt to my throat. My stomach twisted. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The knocks came again, slow and deliberate. I thought of Mama sleeping beside me and of the dark river winding silently through the grass. My mind filled with an image of a wet hand, pressing against our door. I whispered, "The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd." Then silence. I thought it was over. Until I heard the splash. Far away, down the path. Something had gone into the river. The next morning, I told Mama everything. She went quiet for a long time, her fingers twisting the edge of her wrapper. Finally, she said, "Your papa, he dey restless. The river won't take you too." Her words sent a shiver through me. I wanted to believe that God was stronger than any restless spirit, stronger than water that called a name. But a part of me feared she was right. By afternoon, I forced myself to walk the path to the river again. The sun was hot, the air thick with the smell of dust and wet leaves. My calabash felt heavy in my hands, though it was empty. I told myself I had to face it, or the fear would swallow me whole. When I reached the riverbank, I knelt slowly, watching the brown water slide past. I whispered, "In the name of Jesus, you cannot have me." The water rippled. I froze. Then, before my eyes, a pale hand rose from the river. It was slow, almost graceful, dripping with mud and weeds. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. Another hand broke the surface. Then a head. And in the bright, merciless daylight, I saw it, my father's face, eyes empty, skin grey and bloated, weeds tangled in his hair. He opened his mouth. Water poured out. "Ada!" I screamed and ran, the calabash rolling into the mud behind me. I didn't stop until I burst into the compound, gasping and crying. Mama rushed to me, and I fell into her arms, trembling so violently she had to lower us both to the ground. That night, I didn't sleep. I prayed. Over and over, I whispered, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. But deep inside, I wondered if the river had already claimed a piece of me. The fourth night came with rain. The drops fell soft at first, pattering against our thatched roof like footsteps. Then the wind picked up, and the world outside our hut became a chorus of rustling leaves and rushing water. I sat cross-legged on the mat, clutching my Bible. My eyelids were heavy, but fear had rooted me in the waking world. Mama slept beside me, her back rising and falling in rhythm. I envied her calm, but part of me wondered if she only pretended to sleep so she wouldn't hear the whispers. Then I heard it. Even over the sound of the rain. Ada. I froze. My hands shook, and the Bible slipped onto my lap. Ada, come home. The whisper was louder than before, wet and soft, like someone speaking through the rain. I covered my ears, whispering, Jesus. 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 Then came a sound that turned my blood to ice. Splash. Even through the storm, I knew that sound. The river. I don't remember deciding to move, but somehow, I was on my feet. My bare legs trembled as I stepped toward the door. Rain blew in through the cracks, cold against my skin. Mama stirred but didn't wake. The whisper seemed to ride the wind now, calling around my thoughts, sinking deep into my bones. Adaora, it's time. I opened the door. The rain was silver in the moonlight, soaking my wrapper instantly. The path to the river glistened like a snake, winding into darkness. I walked. My feet squelched in the mud. My arms felt light, empty. The Bible had slipped from my hands without me noticing. The rain roared in my ears, but beneath it, I heard the river whispering. The closer I got, the clearer it became. Ada. Ada. The river was alive. It churned and swelled, raindrops bouncing off its surface like tiny sparks. Mist rose from the brown water, curling into shapes that almost looked like hands reaching. I stepped closer, toes sinking into the wet bank. Then I saw him. My father. Half submerged, his grey face just above the waterline, eyes hollow and endless. He reached toward me with a slow, dripping hand. Ada, he whispered. His voice was no longer in my head. It was in the air, in the rain, in the river itself. Tears streamed down my face, mixing with the rain. Papa. My voice cracked. He nodded once, water dripping from his chin. Behind him, other faces began to rise, men, women, children, floating silently in the rain-swollen current. The river had a congregation. All waiting. All watching me. Then, the mud beneath my feet shifted. I slid forward with a gasp. My toes broke the surface of the water. Cold shot up my legs like knives. The hand rose higher. The river swirled, pulling gently, insistently. Come home, Ada. For one heartbeat, I almost gave in. Then I remembered Mama's words. Chinedu's warning. My own whispered prayers. And I screamed into the storm. Jesus! Save me! The wind howled. The river surged, then recoiled. I scrambled backward, crawling in the mud, heart hammering. My father's face twisted with something like sorrow before the water swallowed him whole. The whispers stopped. Only the rain remained. I ran home barefoot, drenched, shaking so hard my teeth clattered. Mama was awake at the door, her face pale with terror. She grabbed me, pulled me inside, and locked the door. I collapsed on the mat, sobbing. And for the first time since that first whisper, I felt the river hesitate. It had not claimed me, not yet. The storm passed by morning, but the river stayed in my chest. Every sound, roosters crow, goats bleat, children laughing, felt distant, as if the world had been reduced to one thing, that restless, brown water that wanted me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't speak. Mama watched me in silence as she pounded yam outside. I saw the worry etched into her face, the deep lines that had appeared since Papa's death. "Child," she said softly, "this river will not leave you until God speaks." I nodded, though my stomach twisted. That night, I made a decision. I would face the river one last time. The moon was a thin slice of silver, barely lighting the path. My feet moved slowly, every step sinking into the damp soil from yesterday's rain. The air smelled of wet leaves and earth. I held the Bible tight in one hand and Mama's small oil lamp in the other. When the river came into view, it was calm, too calm. No ripple, no whisper. Just a wide-brown mirror under the pale moonlight. I stepped to the bank, my heart pounding. "Enough," I said aloud, my voice shaking. "You cannot have me. I belong to God." The river rippled. Bubbles rose to the surface. Then, slowly, a canoe drifted out from the mist. I froze. It was Papa's canoe. Half-rotten, heavy with water, weeds clinging to its sides. The same canoe he took the night he drowned. It bumped against the bank with a dull, hollow thud. And there, tangled in the reeds beside it, was a glint of silver. I knelt carefully and reached out with trembling fingers. My hand closed around the cold, wet chain. Papa's wrist chain. The small silver cross still hung from it, smeared with mud but whole. My chest tightened, and tears filled my eyes. "Papa," I whispered. The river rippled again, and for one breathless moment, I saw him. Not grey and hollow like before at this time, he was young and bright-eyed, smiling at me from beneath the water, free of weeds and sorrow. Then he was gone. I clutched the chain to my chest and whispered through my tears. "The Lord is my shepherd. I will fear no evil." The river seemed to exhale. The water shifted, soft and slow, and the mist began to rise, calling toward the forest. For the first time in weeks, the night felt still. The whispers were gone. The river had released me. When I returned to the hut, Mama was waiting at the door. Her eyes fell on the silver chain in my hand, and she gasped. "Oh, he rests now," she whispered, pulling me into a tight embrace. God done answer prayer. We knelt together on the mat and prayed until the oil lamp died, thanking God for life, for mercy, and for breaking the river's hold. I never went to the river alone again. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I stand at the edge of the village and listen to the water. The river does not call my name anymore, because I belong to a greater voice.
And that's where my story ends. Or at least, that's what I tell myself when the nights get too quiet. Because sometimes, I still hear it. Whispering my name, watching, waiting. So, if you think this was just a story, then pray you never wake up to the same sound in the dark. Subscribe now because the next story might just be yours.